If you spend 12 hours a day in an ambulance, that broken door handle that seems like not that big of an issue gets really annoying when you have to use it 75 times today and it doesn't work.
Right, I agree.
And sometimes as leaders, we can lose sight of those issues because for us, it's a broken door handle. For them, it's that thing that was annoying 75 times today.
Welcome to In Service, the EMS podcast, where frontline experience meets leadership insight. Hosted by Jason Falvey, a seasoned paramedic and EMS leader with over 30 years in the field. This show brings you conversations with people shaping emergency medical services today. From street-level medics to innovators on the bleeding edge of EMS, we dive into real stories, leadership strategies, and what it takes to build high-performing teams in high-stakes environments. Let's get in service.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Today we're joined by a respected EMS leader from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Since 2011, he has worked on the front lines of emergency medical services. He's known for setting high clinical standards, developing strong teams, and mentoring the next generation of EMS professionals. He was the tactical EMS coordinator for the Cheyenne Thames unit. He worked closely with SWAT teams to deliver life-saving care in high-risk scenarios, bringing precision, calm, and tactical expertise into some of the region's most dangerous environments. Rooted in the rugged spirit of Wyoming, he leads with a steady hand, sharp clinical instincts, and a deep respect for the crews he serves alongside. Let's get into it. Welcome. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Appreciate you doing this and spending your time carving it out on a Friday afternoon. So today we're going to talk about the realities of EMS leadership, accountability, culture, and what it takes to earn trust in these high-stakes environments in which we operate.
Yeah.
And you've been here before, episode 1, which is doing really well still. But for anyone who missed it, give us a quick version of where you came from and what got you into EMS.
I got into EMS in 2011. I had a couple of years of floating around trying to figure out what I wanted to be in life, and found a local EMS agency that was sponsoring an EMT program for a reasonable price. So I went ahead and jumped in that and have been hooked since then. Started working for that organization after being certified and worked through the ranks and went into paramedic school and went through the ranks as a medic and branched off and worked in an emergency room for a few years. Came back and worked in supervision and managed local operations and our tactical EMS team locally there in Wyoming, and then got the opportunity to promote again and move out here to Georgia. Been here for a little over a year and a half and really been enjoying it.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the tactical EMS team, because it's super cool, obviously, but what pulled you into doing that?
Yeah, it was a need that there was a gap in the service that the local law enforcement didn't have the ability to do it themselves, and they needed that presence on the team filled. And in a smaller community, you become really passionate about it because those guys on that team are your friends, your neighbors, people you work with on a daily basis. And I didn't want to be on the outside looking in and having them in a bad situation where I could otherwise help. The closer I could be to it, the more help I could be to potentially save one of my friends or neighbors when they're in a tough spot. That's what got me interested in it, and then the company signed on for it and needed somebody to take that on, and that was me.
Which I think is kind of an unusual thing for our organization to get involved with something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome thing to be involved with, right? A whole different element of EMS medicine.
It kind of illustrated it's not all about the bottom line and transports and finance, and some of it is just doing what's right for the community. And if the community has a need and we can fill that need, we'll do that.
Yeah, because how would you even, there's really no mechanism to bill for anything like that.
No,
It's not.
No, not really.
It's really just your interest and drive and the need to serve.
Yeah. Especially in a smaller community, these teams aren't well funded. It's not like they can pay us to provide medical services. They probably have no or a very limited budget.
Right.
They're not a revenue generating team, so they can't pass on that revenue to anybody else. It was the right thing to do, so we did it.
Awesome. You've been in EMS a long time. I know we talked about some calls that stood out to you in the past. Do you have any other calls you'd want to share?
Yeah, some of them that stand out to me as it relates to more of my role now is the ones that required a lot of coordination, especially across multiple organizations. So like mass casualties, things like that.
Right.
The more I climb through the organization, the more I appreciate the amount of effort and planning that goes into that. When I was in the field, I don't know that I really understood how much my leaders were working with the fire department leaders and law enforcement leaders to be prepared for that day to come. When it came, we had a process we followed. It never goes as planned, but there was somebody that had that pre-planned, and I never knew who they were, and now I'm much more aware of how much effort and planning has to go into being prepared for that, sometimes once in a career call.
Yeah, when you have one of those high-profile calls, it really is a challenge for the providers to perform care on the patient. But when you step back to a leadership role, everything that's involved in managing that call, it really does take it up another notch. It's super challenging.
I don't want field crews to be worrying about how this is going to reflect on the media or how we're going to deal with it financially. They need to be focused on taking care of the patients and performing their duties. Us as leaders, we will make sure that we're prepared for any media inquiries or dealing with outside agencies. We got to have a robust system in place so we don't have that burden landing on the shoulders of the care providers at the field level.
Let's shift over and talk about credibility and presence. There's a difference between holding rank and having credibility. How do you actually earn credibility in today's EMS environment?
Yeah, I mean, credibility is showing people what you are and who you are. I'm a firm believer that the color of your shirt or the insignia on your collar doesn't make you a leader. I know I've had that conversation with you before where I don't have to walk in a room and see that your shirt's white to know you're the supervisor. I should know that based on your presence and how you carry yourself and how you lead your team. I should be able to pick out who the leader in that room is without...
It's not the gray hair.
Yeah, without seeing any insignia or anything. Anybody can be a leader in any moment. It doesn't take somebody with a chief level title to lead through a situation. It may be that brand new EMT is well suited in that particular moment to lead through that situation.
We do have quite a few informal leaders here, right, that weren't dubbed to be in charge, but they definitely lead every day.
Yeah, and oftentimes those are your most influential and most valuable teammates. Like in an organization like ours, the span of control can grow pretty high, especially at the field level where you may have 30, 40 employees out there with one supervisor. There's a lot of informal leaders out there leading their micro teams through the process, whether that be FTOs or senior EMTs, senior paramedics. Our organization, and I think EMS as a whole, relies heavily on having those people.
Yeah, I agree. What behaviors do you think a leader can perform, or what behaviors build credibility fastest?
I think building trust, you do that through accountability. You do that through transparency. Celebrate successes, but there's going to be failures. You're going to have missteps, but you got to own that. I think nothing destroys a leader's credibility more than when something goes wrong, finding all the blame in the situation. I think it goes a long ways to shoulder that blame and say, this is where I, as the leader, didn't have the processes in place or mismanaged the process, and here's what I'm going to do to prevent that from happening in the future. And then you got to do those things. You can't just say it. You got to follow through on the commitments you make to your team. If you tell them you're going to fix a solution, you got to fix it. And if there's missteps along the way, communicate those.
Yeah, this old phrase that success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. Nobody wants to own the failure. Yeah.
It's hard to swallow your pride and say, that didn't go well, and that's on me. Yeah. And sometimes as the leader of an organization, you may not have been the one that actually dropped the ball, but you're the leader. So you get to shoulder that. And I think good leaders shoulder that for their team.
Yeah. And I know you're a fan of Jocko Willink, right, in Extreme Ownership and what he's written in that book and how they lead in those very extreme environments, extreme teams. Accountability, ownership, that's a huge piece of leadership. And at the end of the day, if something really goes bad here, the entire leadership team is going to own a piece of that. And eventually it comes down to one person who's going to take responsibility.
Yeah, I think it's very important publicly. If the organization fails, that's me. I failed, and I have to own that and put that out. And then locally, we'll have our local leadership meetings, and we'll figure out exactly what happened and address things specifically. But outwardly, I get to own that as the leader of the operation.
And it's usually a cascade, right? Cascading effect of failures that occurred,
Right.
or something wasn't, or people weren't held accountable along the way, and then it rolled into this. But what are the behaviors you think destroy trust and credibility the quickest from a leader?
I think the lack of consistency.
Yeah.
Lack of consistency drives people to be held accountable unevenly. We all have the people that we have learned to rely on over time, and it's human nature to, if they misstep, to want to give that person a pass because 99% of the time they're a strong performer. But their missteps should be treated the same as any other's missteps, because nobody wants to mess up. Nobody wants to not get it right. And sometimes we'll take those high performers and not point out their missteps. And that's a disservice to them, because they want to correct any missteps they have. If we're not forthcoming enough to tell them, hey, we didn't get it right here, they don't have the chance to correct it. Over time, that can build into missteps, and that once super high performer can now become a low performer.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And the transverse can be true, where you can take a low performer and provide them consistent feedback and develop plans to improve them. And you can take a low performer and turn them into a high performer. But it takes consistent, honest feedback. And you don't have to be mean, but honesty is important, that we don't overly sugarcoat stuff. If we screwed up, we screwed up. Let's figure out how to fix it.
Yeah. I agree with you. We've seen leaders drift or move into admin roles and lose touch with the field staff. What does that do to a system over time? I think we share very similar thoughts on leadership and the roles and how we should be functioning as leaders. But when you have a large span of control, a lot of people on the road, it's hard to maintain that consistency, because I may not see people for a couple of shifts. I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at where their vehicle is, and I'm tracking them from a distance, but I'm not always getting that face-to-face contact with them every day.
I think it's something that happens naturally, and the higher through an organization you climb, the further you get from the field. Sometimes that can be construed as losing touch, but really it's just a change in roles. The vice president of the organization is not going to have the same connection with the field that the frontline supervisor has, and that's okay. But as a leader, your team is your direct report. As a supervisor, your team is the field. So your relationship with the field is different than mine, because my team is the supervisors. So my connection to the field is through the supervisors. I rely on the supervisors having that strong field connection,
right,
to give me the information I need of what's going on in the field. Because if I don't have that, that means I now have to be in the field an exorbitant amount of time, which can drive, maybe I'm in the field more, and crews love that because they see their manager for 18 hours a day in the field. But if I do that, that means all the management functions I'm supposed to be doing aren't getting done.
Yeah, and there's a tremendous amount that goes on here behind the scenes that the average person on the road just doesn't see, right? The logistics of running an organization and the ordering of supplies, the insurance of compliance with all the regulations, and there are a lot that affect healthcare for sure. And people don't typically see that. And especially in my role here, I don't think people really have a full understanding of the scope and the breadth of what it is we're doing every day as supervisors. They may see us for a few minutes here and there or out at the hospital or during shift change, but there's a lot going on.
Yep. Yeah, it can be, every bit as fast-paced in the office as it is in the field. It feels different. It's a different fast pace. I may not have 4 patients in front of me, but I have 4 meetings going on, and all of them are important. Everybody wants my attention and my time. Just like in the field, you got to prioritize and triage the stuff that's in front of you. Instead of triaging patients and triaging your clinical care, you're triaging a financial issue or a compliance issue or a human resources investigation, you name it. It's a different problem set, but work through it in a similar manner.
Because the reality is we have to put trucks on calls. It's essentially the mission to service the calls coming in every day. But payroll is going to happen on Friday.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen, and all the things that have to occur behind the scenes to make sure that happens is so important. But how important is it for leaders to actually still show up in the field? And what does it look like when that's done right?
Yeah, I think it is important. I think to do it right is dependent on your organization and your team and what the specific needs at the moment are, right? If it's because you have 5 calls holding, maybe your appearance in the field needs to be on a truck helping them run calls. Maybe the next day the focus is maybe I'm not running a call. Maybe I'm just meeting you at the hospital, helping you turn over your patients, or maybe we're just socializing. Maybe, hey, did you see the new policy that came out? Or, hey, do you need anything today? Hey, it's 110 degrees, you need a water. It can be that simple. But I think something that needs to be the focus of any of those is being very intentional about it. If my intent is to spend time in the field doing any of those things, that's what I need to be doing. If I show up to interact with Jason today on a call or at the hospital and I have my AirPods in and I'm also on a meeting, you feel that. You feel that I'm not engaged. Maybe I'm here talking to you to check a box to say that I talked to you. But if I'm going to be out there doing it, I need to be intentional. And I'm there to engage with you, and that's what I'm going to be doing, not being distracted by meetings or whatever else might be going on.
It's easy for me to lose time in the office. I could spend 3 hours working on a report to track in-service times or on-scene times or any metric. You could lose hours analyzing that data, and the importance of being out in the field and having that face-to-face contact is important. And when you look at the number of people on the road every day, some people don't want to see me. They're so independent. They've got it locked in. They run their calls. They don't need that much contact with me. And others require a lot of hands-on, face-to-face contact. But let me ask you about credibility and trust again. Once it's lost, and we talked a little bit about what can cause a leader to lose trust, right? Mm-hmm. Is it a one-shot deal or can it be rebuilt?
I don't think it's a one-shot deal. It shouldn't be, because you may be a leader, you may be a field personnel, you may be the CEO of the company. We're all humans. We're all going to misstep at times or make mistakes. I think your opportunity as a leader to make it not a one-shot deal is how you react to that failure. If you're the one that turns and, I know this failure happened, but these 10 things happened to me, that's why it happened. People aren't going to let you recover from that because they're not seeing you take accountability for that. So I think if you present that as a learning opportunity, like this failure happened, this is why it happened, this is the things we're going to implement to make sure they don't happen again, you can earn that trust back. But it's hard professionally, personally, anything. When trust or faith in an organization or something is diminished, it's really hard to get back, and it takes a lot of work.
The providers out on the road, every single one of them has a different expectation and understanding of what we're doing, of what they require from us.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of being a leader, especially I think the supervision level is specifically challenging because the span of control is so great. Like I have 6 direct reports to me, and you have 46.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to connect with you guys individually. It's much more difficult for you to connect one-on-one, face-to-face with 46 individuals. And your individuals have a partner.
Right. Yeah.
It can be really difficult. And you got to know those individuals and know that, employee A expects this of you. And employee B expects the polar opposite. And they're probably on the same truck together. So good luck interacting with that crew.
Yeah.
Because one of them wants to see you and wants to engage with you. The other one doesn't want you anywhere near them. So you got to navigate that. And it can be a real challenge.
Let's shift over and talk about policy versus the reality. We write policies, they look great on paper. It runs through 17 different people to get approvals. Where does it actually break down in real operations?
I think there's a couple things that happen that diminish policy. One can be the policy itself, right? It's just not a good policy. Hopefully you catch that in the writing and the approval and all those processes. But if not, you will when you go to implement it. You will find out where the failure points of that policy are. Sometimes it is a good policy. Sometimes you have a perfectly fine, workable policy that in all worlds should be a great thing for you. The other way it fails is how we enforce it, how consistent or accountable we are to our own policy, and how we enforce other policy can affect. So if we implement a new policy and we say we're really going to focus on this and we're going to make this a priority, but as an organization you've ignored 10 other policies, your staff is going to feel that. It's one of the credibility things. If you don't enforce all your policies, then why do you have them? And if that question comes up, do we even have this policy? You should listen to those questions. And maybe you have some explaining to do of this is why we need this policy. But if you have that same question, let's go back to the drawing board because we've all experienced it, right? We have that policy. Nobody really knows why we have it and nobody enforces it. And oftentimes we have the control to change it, but we don't.
Right.
Why have that policy that we know we're not going to enforce? Nobody agrees with the policy. We're leaders. Let's change it.
And there's often a disconnect, in my opinion, between the intent of the policy versus the letter of the policy. And so many people focus so much on what the letter of the policy is. And we'll say, for example, a uniform policy. It's like 6 pages long.
Yeah.
We go into detail about the buckle and the material the strap is made of. But the reality is the intent of the policy is we want our people to look professional, right? It builds credibility when you arrive on scene and you're squared away and you're in a matching uniform, and it conveys that level of authority that you have to be there performing these procedures on the patient.
It can be very, very difficult to find that middle ground on policy because really that policy should read, show up to work in a clean, professional, safe uniform, the end.
Yeah.
But we know that's not how it works because somebody deviates from that and, well, you didn't say that I can't wear that. So then that gets added to the policy. And next thing you know, you have a 6-page policy that outlines every detail. Because I think it's human nature, right? Nobody wants to be managed with black and white. But when they're asking questions, they want black and white.
Yeah.
I don't want you to apply a black and white policy to me. I want you to be fair and use some human factors and judgment in how that policy should be applied. But when I'm looking to get around that policy, I want you to follow that policy black and white.
Yeah.
So it's hard to balance that and not over policy, but it's an organization. You have to have policy.
It's funny because I'll have somebody come in and say, hey, XYZ person here they're not following the uniform policy. Those shoes are not shinable. They're wearing sneakers or something. They're clean, they're presentable, they're functioning, and they do a great job every day. So what do I do? Do I address that element of the fact that
I think that
maybe the sneaker has a logo on it, it's not solid black?
Yeah, that's one where we need to evaluate our policy, right?
Yeah.
Do we need to be that specific as an organization? we're okay with safe shoes that are clean and presentable and meet the standard. But our policy says it has to be a leather shinable shoe. But if we're okay with not a leather shinable shoe, let's change the policy. For example, during a policy review meeting years ago, we were discussing appearance, and specifically tattoos. And there is a large debate going on what the tattoo policy should read, and some pretty strong passion on no visible tattoos, nothing on the hands or neck. And I was sitting back kind of amused because I was looking around the table of all of the leaders at the table, and 80% of the people at the table had visible tattoos while we were sitting there.
Yeah.
Whether it be they had a wedding band tattooed on their finger or a little butterfly on their knuckle. But do we really want to limit unprofessional or obscene tattoos? What we're really focused on, so let's say that.
Something that could be construed as offensive to a coworker or a patient.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't want to explain our personal judgment on things, so we try to write the policy very black and white, so when we get questioned on it, we can rely on what the policy said.
Right.
Because what you deem as professional appearance might be different than what the HR representative in Texas deems as professional appearance.
Right.
And it's easier to not have that conversation. So it's easier from a management level to write a policy that's just concrete, black and white.
How much time do we lose? How much time as leaders are we spending debating things like this?
Oh, massive amounts. Yeah.
Think about if we transition that time into actually being out on the road or engaging directly with people, which does have a real impact,
Yep.
versus 10 managers debating a butterfly tattoo on a knuckle.
Yep.
Really, right? We're losing the intent of the policy itself as being lost somewhere down the road.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I see the failures in our policies. And then you come back, I have to try and enforce all this. And we could have a paramedic that is an absolute superstar. They're incredible in their assessment skills, their communication skills, their everything they're doing. But yet I'm going to spend time coaching them on, but it's not conforming to the letter of what's written in that policy.
Sometimes I think ideally, when we write these policies, it should go through every layer, and we should test that policy. We should send it up to the highest of the chain and to the field level and say, review this policy, take it apart, tell me what's wrong. But we have to get the handbook renewed. We don't have 9 months to work on it. We have 30 days to get it rewritten, submitted, and approved.
Right.
That review happens after the handbook's out and executed, and then we'll update it at the next iteration. But now we're a year down the road where we've had a policy that nobody really loved to begin with.
Are you really ever going to get it perfect? I don't think so. You just got to get close, I think, and then go from there. But a big debate came up over responding to emergencies. You're on the highway, and people drive fast, right? Mm-hmm. But our policy has limits on the speed in which we can drive, even emergency. Right. And there's very good reasons for that, safety reasons. And so this became a big debate over, hey, if I'm being passed by vehicles on the highway and I'm running lights and siren, should we turn the lights and siren off and just proceed at whatever the normal speed? I say I would leave that to your judgment to you tell me what's safe. I'm not behind the wheel. It's embarrassing to be passed by somebody.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's got to be within the guardrails, because I can tell you to shut your lights and sirens off and drive at the flow of traffic. But I have to trust that you understand that that means you have to work within the bounds of the law and the existing policy. So if you shut your lights and sirens off, you have to do the speed limit. You have to stay within policy. Just because flow of traffic is doing 90 does not mean you get to do 90.
Right.
How do you policy that? How do you
police that? Yeah.
Yeah, you can't write a policy for every single what-if scenario. If the speed limit's 55 and flow of traffic is 65, you can do 65 per the law and per policy if your lights and sirens are activated. But you cannot just because flow of traffic is going that fast.
Right.
If you do it without lights and sirens, you're speeding by 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, regardless if you're on a call or not.
Yeah. And that, when you look at policy, really, if you look at everything through the lens of, is it ethical, is it legal, and is it the right thing to do? If you're clear those three questions, our policy should be in line with that.
I agree with you. If I think somebody's trying to do the right thing for the patient and they deviate slightly from what the policy is saying, this is the challenge, right? I'm giving you a look, right? But that's the real challenge, right? Do I crucify that employee because they deviated from the letter when they were doing the right thing for the patient?
I mean, that's why we do investigations, right? When we have deviations, we investigate what happened. Part of that is, I'm going to come to you, Jason, and say, policy says this, but you did this. What happened?
Right.
For me personally, the worst thing you could say to me is, I don't know. Because now you just deviated policy and you don't even know why. You just did it.
Yeah, you should be able to.
But if you come to me and say, well, Derek, I did it because it's better for the patient and it was the right thing to do, and I had these barriers to doing it by the letter of the policy, and by doing that would have created an unsafe situation. If you can articulate those things to me, I can understand where your head was and work with you on that. But if you got a I don't know answer, where am I supposed to go from there? Other than just say, well, here's the policy. You're now educated. Follow the policy. If you tell me your thought process, I can say, okay, I hear you. In the future, let's make these adjustments. Maybe there's a policy update that needs to happen. We'll do that because it's part of our investigation, right? We look at human behaviors. We look at system behaviors. And if there's deviations in either of them, we should be addressing those. We should be fixing our systems that are preventing people from following the policy. If the policy is affecting the system negatively, then we need to adjust that.
That's interesting. Because if I asked you to write a policy on what you just said, it would take you 2 years. Right? How do you put that down? Let's talk about policy expectations. The policies that sounded really good when it was written out, but consistently fail in practice. You want to throw out an example? Let me restate it. What policy or expectations sound good, but consistently fail in practice?
Well, I think an example of a policy that can sound really good but not play out the way you want it to can circle back to a lot of things we already talked about. We can put in a policy saying, Jason, you need to be in service. If your shift starts at 7, you need to be in service at 7 o'clock. But you're also going to share the truck with that 7 p.m. crew, and they're not due to come into the station until 6:55. Do I really think that crew is going to get off and you're going to get on in 5 minutes? That policy sounds great. I'm going to get my crews in service in 5 minutes. That sounds awesome. I got to have systems working in the background that allow that to actually happen. Something we're going through right now with our deployment process. We're working through that because we understand we're having timely in-service issues, and some of that is system-driven. We're working to improve that system to remove those barriers for the crews to be able to get in service on time. Because I can't hold a crew accountable for being in service late if they don't have what they need to do to get in service on time.
We know the ambulance has to be stocked to state specifications. Is it really a good investment of time and resources to delay an in-service an hour to find that we're missing a couple of thermometer covers?
Right.
Is this what we're doing? Right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there can be more than one checklist, right? There can be the checklist of every item that is supposed to be on that truck, and then there can be a critical checklist of, I have to have these 22 things to run a call and be in service.
Right.
I'm going to check these 22 things before I leave the parking lot. The other 187 things, it'd be great if they're there, but if I'm missing one package of electrodes, I can replace those later. It's not going to affect whether I can run the call that's in front of me or not.
the delay of that in-service could affect us getting a closer unit to a high-level call.
Right.
Right. That would be a failure. Right?
Yeah. And all circles back to credibility, trust. We have to have those systems in place where crews then come in and we say, your truck has all the critical stuff it needs to run those calls. And as an organization, if that trust has been diminished, we have to build that back. Our crews say, okay, and they'll get in that truck and go run a call because they now trust, because we built the credibility saying it's there, and it's there because they experience that. But,
right.
But the first time they go out and you told them it was there and it's not, that's a ding on your credibility. The 30 seconds it took to ruin that credibility, you're going to spend 30 days trying to build that back.
Right. Right. I agree. I would put a stronger emphasis on making sure that I have a 7.0 or a 7.5 ET tube versus 10 thermometer covers.
Right.
The thermometer covers are important, right? We don't want to cross-contaminate or get a patient sick, but if I have 5, that might work.
Yeah.
So I guess this leads us to the bigger question here, right, is how do we close the gap between the intent, leadership intent versus execution in the field? Because what we just discussed about the in-service times, yeah, it's important that when we look at getting people in service, we'd rather have crews come in, get in service quickly, and be able to service the calls that are coming through, and then release that person early on the back end of the shift. Who wouldn't want to get out an hour early? Right? But we can't do that if somebody's spending an hour and a half to count every Band-Aid.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think if operations has a standard we're trying to meet and we're not hitting that metric, back to the investigation, right? I use the term investigation, but that can be an informal process, right? It's not just saying, Jason, you were late in service today. Here's your corrective action for being late in service. Don't do it again. It should be more of a, let's seek to understand, let's be curious, let's investigate. So that conversation should look more like, hey, Jason, what happened today? You were late in service. What was the barriers to getting you in service on time? Did you not have the supplies you need? Was your truck not available? Were you distracted? Did somebody tie you up in the hallway? Or were you late to work? Or did you just choose not to go in service? What happened? Because you can't solve a problem if you don't know what caused the problem. We know what the outcome of the problem was, which was somebody went in service late.
Right.
But the real problem underlying that could be any of those things I just listed. And until we remove those barriers, our times are never going to improve because the things that cause them to be late are still going to be there.
We can't be everywhere all at once. But I think being present during that process, especially the beginning of a new process, will help us understand where the fail points are. And we can observe where a crew is getting hung up, improving that in-service time. And we should be helping them to be able to get through that. Because at the end of the day, right, we're either going to achieve our goals or fall to the level of our systems that we have in place.
We've got to have systems and processes in place that allow you to achieve the things you're trying to achieve. If your systems are holding you back, then let's revamp the systems. You'll never know that if you're not curious, if you don't really want to figure out what's going on. Why are we consistently not meeting our charting metric on blood sugar verification? Well, maybe the image trend software is broken. Maybe that's why it's happening.
Right.
Maybe we haven't put out the education. Probably not that people just don't care and aren't doing it. That's the most rare version of it, but it certainly happens.
It's not a very intuitive piece of software.
Right. But if we don't ask those questions, it appears that Jason refuses to chart blood sugars correctly.
Right.
And that's oftentimes not the case. Back to being honest with people, nobody wants to fail. And nobody wants to know that they've been failing for years and not meeting the standard for years, and nobody's ever told them that. It's hard enough to hear that you're not meeting a standard in real time. It's really hard to hear that you haven't been meeting it for a long time.
Let's talk about accountability and standards, right? There's a fine line between holding people accountable and pushing them away. Mm-hmm. How do we balance that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't have an organization or a successful one without accountability and standards. Like, they have to exist, but we manage humans, and that we got to understand that too, right? But
I think I honestly have been supervising or leading or managing people for a very long time, and it's really easy early on to take things personally. I know they're aware of the expectations, or at least I believe they were aware of the expectations, and they're not achieving the expectation, and I take it personal without seeking to understand what's going on first. Is there an obstacle to them achieving that expectation? So where do you think leaders are getting it wrong?
I think we tend to, in good faith, take policy or procedure, and we have somebody not meet a standard, and their reason for it sounds genuine and is genuine, and we give them a pass. And then it happens again, and this time it even sounds more genuine, more reasonable. We give them another pass. And then sooner or later, the more exceptions to the rule we give, in the short term, you don't feel the degradation that's happening of your policy and procedures. Over a period of time, especially over a larger organization, if you have 10s, 20s, 30s people, and you give each of them a small exemption here and there, that starts to build and become more frequent. And sooner or later, the rule becomes the exception.
Right.
It becomes the rarity that you hold somebody accountable to that rule. Most of our policies do allow for some runway. There's not a lot that the first time you ever do it, you're going to lose your job. Most of it starts with, let's have a conversation.
It would have to be extremely high risk to lose your job right out of the gate.
Most of it, like attendance, we're going to write it down, and then we're going to start the corrective action process. Those first few events that lead up to that conversation, those cover your life happened. I overslept, my car broke down.
Right.
I think where the organization we get off sometimes is we're humans, and we feel bad for humans, and my child care fell through, so I'm going to give you a pass today because your child care fell through. I have kids. I know what that feels like. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's difficult.
6 months down the road, I'm like, man, Jason's had child care issues every week for 6 months now. Is that the organization's issue, or does Jason have a personal issue that he needs to figure out? You got to strike that balance. The organization has to function, and your life has to function. At what point does the organization make that split and say, you have to manage your life, we have to manage the organization? And if the missteps that are happening in your life are preventing you from being a part of the organization, that sucks. None of us want to come to that realization, but we have to have a functioning organization. I have to be able to, if I have somebody on the schedule, I got to count on that they're going to be here when they said they're going to be here. Understanding that every once in a while they're going to be late or be sick or whatever may happen. But I think the little bit of grace, we unintentionally, in good faith, we overextend, and it quickly spirals out of control where the policy already has grace built into it. But we think because we wrote down that you were late today, we should give them a pass. It's like, well, no, we still got to track it, because otherwise we got to start somewhere. And it is a hard line because we don't want to, we don't want to punish people for life happening. But we all realize some people have a life that's kind of a mess. Their life is not our responsibility to manage. Like, we should be there to support them, and that's part of that seeking to understand. When you have those conversations of, Jason, you've been running late, you've been calling off, like, is there something I can support you with? Is your alarm clock broken? Like, are you having car trouble? Like, what can I connect you with our employee assistance program? Like, how can we help you? I don't think giving them a pass for not meeting the standard is helping them.
Yeah.
That's just giving them a pass for not meeting the standard.
And you kind of looked at me when I was talking about early on in my career, I would take these things personally, right? But that would affect how I would engage somebody in this conversation about timeliness.
It's really easy to feel that way.
Right.
Especially as a leader, it's more personal for me when it's that leader that is a high performer and does meet the standard all the time. When they don't, or it becomes a pattern, it's hard for it not to feel personal. Because it's easy for me to think, Jason, I thought we had mutual respect. Like, why do you not respect me enough to do what I ask you to do?
Right.
It's not personal. I need to say, Jason, why aren't we meeting the standard? Are you not on the 5 o'clock call every day because that's shift change and that's not a good time? Do I need to adjust the time of the call? Or do I be angry at you because you keep skipping the call?
Hey, it's Jason Falvey. Thank you for spending part of your day with me here on In Service. If something from this episode hit home, maybe it reminded you of a call, a shift, or a hard lesson learned, follow the show and please send it to just one person and ask them to follow. Now let's get in service. Have we gotten too comfortable accepting good enough?
Yeah, I think so. I think we tend to focus a lot on the new bright and shiny if we start a new operation or get a new contract. It's implement all these new things and really focus on improving stuff. We don't put a lot of focus in places that have been around for a long time to keep them from having to go through that process. We get complacent. Everybody does. It's trying to find a way to manage that depending on the market. Sometimes you end up in where it's an old community. It's primarily nursing home calls. You don't run a lot of violent crime, or you don't have major highways running through there. Pretty predictable system. You tend to slack a little bit on contingency planning and making sure you're prepared for that. What if we have a building collapse and there's 30 patients there? Are we prepared for that at any given time? We should be. Yeah. Because we have the facility there that could collapse. Striking the balance, right, of you can't live in the sky is falling mentality of every minute of every day that building's going to collapse. But you got to have some contingency planning. You got to handle the work that's in front of you. Yeah. In the background, you got to be prepared because you don't, from like a simple staffing model, you don't staff to exactly what you need. You always have a little extra, right? If you need 14 ambulances to run your deployment and that'll keep your head at the water level, you don't staff 14. You go up 1 or 2. Right. Same thing with disaster planning. If your normal system is capable of transporting 100 patients in a 24-hour period, you should be prepared for what if we surge up to 120, because that will happen. These disasters will happen. If you don't have the capabilities, do you have the mutual aid agreements? Do you have the planning in place for when that does happen? It can be even at the very local level, right? Like, our system's slow. Nothing bad ever happens if I take an hour to go in service, but what happens when it does? Or can we get you in service in a reasonable amount of time? That's where we start to deviate from standards, right? We have a policy that says 15 minutes, but we don't ever actually need people in service in 15 minutes, so we let it creep, and next thing you know, we're at an hour and a half, and then the system gets busier. Right? It'd be really nice to have them in 15 minutes, like our policy says. Shouldn't we be continuously, as leaders, optimizing our systems? Yeah. Refining them, looking for the holes, the shortcomings, improving things consistently. Mm-hmm. I think if we did that, we would achieve our goals more, right? Yeah. We'd have a better functioning system overall. It should be a constant review process, right? You don't set it and forget it. That's not how our world works. You implement a new system. There's the implementation phase. There's the testing phase. There's the review phase. There's the re-review phase, just like our handbook, right? We review that annually. We have to refresh it at least every 4 years, but we should be looking at it on a continuous basis. Every time you apply a policy, be thinking about, is this policy effective? And if it's not, let's talk about it and talk about why it's not effective. And is it even worthwhile, right? Yeah, sometimes you don't need the policy anymore. Right. Or maybe now you need one because technology came about that didn't. AI today is a good example. 2 years ago, did anybody have AI policy? Probably not. Who does now? Everybody, right? And we talked about, I still see people's signatures that have their office phone number listed. I don't even have a phone in my office. I have a cell phone. But we still have policy and documentation that supports that archaic system that a lot of places just aren't using anymore.
I'll often get phone calls that will say, hey, the dispatcher's not following the posting plan. And I'll look at it and okay, right? Maybe they're not following it to the letter, but I'm looking at where all the calls are populating on the screen, where we're transporting to. I'm like, well, they must be anticipating where if we're dropping a lot of calls in this particular area of the county and they have more resources in that area of the county versus following what the plan is saying, I'm like, okay, they're anticipating something. They're expecting the next call to come here.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he is deviating from the posting policy.
Yeah, and I think going back to like anything, if you're the one deviating from that policy, if I'm the one investigating it and I come to you and say, hey, Jason, like we weren't following the posting plan, what happened? If you have an answer for me and say, hey, this facility has been having a GI outbreak and they've been dumping 10 times the patients they normally do, so I've been hovering crews around there. Great, let's move on. But if you're just like, I don't know, okay, well, you should know.
No, yeah, exactly. I agree. But in the former, I have an understanding of what's going on at the moment. And that dispatcher has an understanding of what's happening. It's dynamic, fluid, shifting, and they're making adjustments. Should we allow that?
Yeah,
or should we stick to the policy?
Yeah, I think it's a hard balance, right? Because from my level, I may look and see that the posting plan's not being followed at that moment. I happen to be looking at the CAD, but I'm far enough removed from that functionality. You and the dispatcher may have a plan figured out, and I should either ask you guys what's going on or trust my team, right?
Right.
It's not my role to manage the posting plan. That's your role and the dispatcher's role. And if I can't trust you to do that, I probably have another problem. Maybe the problem's me. Maybe I'm micromanaging and I can't relinquish that control. But maybe on the flip side is you're not performing the way I need you to. And that's why I'm micromanaging you. But at the end of the day, I don't think micromanagement is the answer to that. I think the answer is if you're deviating from where we need you to be, I need to get you to the standard. And that doesn't happen through micromanagement. That happens through questions and answers and education and explanation, because maybe you don't understand why it's so important that we follow the policy. You know, because oftentimes people will think a policy is terrible and they hate it and they don't understand why we even have it. And there's probably a good explanation for it.
And it could be a failure to communicate the importance of it.
Right. You know, yeah, we have this policy. I'm expecting you to follow it. But here's why it's important. It's important that you show up to work on time, because if you don't, I can't get that other crew home. You respect your time with your family, but I can't get you home to your family if your relief isn't here on time.
Right.
So the system has to work together.
Let's talk about culture and leadership realities. What behaviors quietly destroy the culture without leadership even realizing it? We're trying to build a culture where, obviously, professional, we want to be performing at extremely high levels, excellent patient care, but we also want people to enjoy coming to work, want to be here, be a part of the team. So what are those behaviors that destroy that, and we don't even realize it's happening?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, you and I both mentioned that it's easy to take things personally.
Mm-hmm.
When we do that, it can really damage your relationship with providers, right? If they come to you with an issue and you take that as a personal attack. If they say, hey, Jason, our system's broken here, we need to fix it. And you react as being accused of you being,
Right. Yeah, we talked about that this morning.
That reaction is going to drive that employee to not report things to you, because they're going to say, Jason just takes that personally and reacts, and he's not actually solving the problem. Maybe they'll give you that chance, right? The one shot. Maybe they'll give you a second chance and report something again, but then you react that way again. Now they don't feel comfortable reporting issues to you because you treat them as if they're personally attacking you.
Yeah, we discussed it this morning. I said, it's a gift in a way to us that they're finding things that we've missed. That's a gift. Now we can adjust.
You and I don't have the time to go turn over every seat and open every box and be at every hospital and be at every scene. If our crews who are there experiencing it don't feel comfortable talking to us about it, then we're unaware that these issues are happening and we can't solve something we're unaware of. You can create this challenge, right? People say, I reported that. Nothing got done, so I'm just not going to report things anymore. But they're still frustrated that the issue's there. And sometimes you pay for previous leadership, or if there's a culture that's how the organization functions, that I'm going to report something and it's going to get blown off and not addressed. Yeah. And then we get frustrated because we're like, you've been dealing with this for how long and you haven't said anything to me? I could have fixed that in 20 minutes if you would have told me it was broken.
Right.
But they don't feel comfortable reporting it because they have reported it. Just may not have been to you. Maybe it was you and you're a different person now because leaders grow, leaders change. But yeah, I think earning the trust of your crews that when they report something to you, you'll address it. And if you can't, be honest with them. Say, hey, I hear you. That's frustrating. It's broken, but we can't fix it, at least not right now. And here's why.
Right.
Right. People aren't always going to love the answer, but they will respect the transparency and the honesty.
Right. In the grand scheme here, that issue is important, but there are other issues that are much more important that we're putting all our energy and effort to addressing.
Yeah.
How often do you get dragged away from working on things that are important to launch into an investigation or a review of something that's really minor?
Yeah, it can be super challenging, right? Because people want the big stuff addressed, obviously.
Because what's important to you may not be important to me.
Yeah. I want those same things addressed, but I'm not the guy that's going, if you bring something to me, I'm not going to ignore it. It may be trivial, it may be petty, but I will address it.
Oh,
and
you're a very organized person.
every time I have to address those petty or trivial things is hours that I'm not focused on the bigger system issues that we can be working on. And it's hard because I will address those little issues, because if you don't, they turn into big issues. You can't ignore them, as trivial or petty as they may be. And some of it is being self-aware too, that because it's trivial and petty to me doesn't mean that it's trivial and petty to the person reporting it.
Right.
It may sound like the silliest thing I've dealt with all week, but to that individual, it was a big deal. And it affects their satisfaction in where they work and how they do their job. Part of my role is to make people's jobs and lives as enjoyable as possible. Sometimes you get boundary pushing. People will be upset that something they're passionate about is not changing, so they'll push boundaries somewhere else to see if you'll address that. I understand from a human perspective why that happens, but from an organizational perspective, when you push those boundaries, now I got to deal with that. And I may have been working on that thing you cared about, but now I can't work on it because I'm dealing with your boundary pushing. And that just takes away time. Everything is time. There's only so much time we have. The more we spend doing the smaller tasks, the less we spend doing the bigger tasks.
And I know you've spent 70 hours investigating, interviewing, drilling down on an issue that really wasn't much of an issue to begin with. It took up so much time that just took you away. That's a week and a half of work.
Yeah, it can be a lot. There's always something in there, right? As much as that can be hard to deal with, there's always something to gain from it. I can use that time to build relationships and build trust with the other people involved. I can use that time to develop people, maybe get to the bottom of, why was this a big deal for you? Like, I don't see it as a big deal. Why do you? Maybe we find some common ground there, because maybe it was a bigger deal and I missed what about it was a big issue, because at different levels, different things are more important, right? If you spend 12 hours a day in an ambulance, that broken door handle that seems like not that big of an issue gets really annoying when you have to use it 75 times today and it doesn't work.
Right, I agree.
And sometimes as leaders, we can lose sight of those issues because for us, it's a broken door handle. For them, it's that thing that was annoying 75 times today.
Yeah, I'm holding 3 calls. That door handle's not going to seem very important to me. Yeah, but it is important.
Yeah. Because if we don't care about those things, it drives the crews to not care. If we don't care about their priorities, they're not going to care about ours. The crews will only take care of the organization if the organization takes care of the crews.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's talk about decision-making under pressure. We don't always have all the facts. We often have to make decisions based on incomplete information. So how do you approach decision-making under pressure like that? Is there a framework that you use?
Yeah, something I've learned over time is you got to understand what is the real pressure, not perceived pressure, right? Because sometimes that time frame that you self-imposed might not actually be there. You responded out to a call and you saw the crew do something that you didn't like. It didn't affect patient care, but you want to address it. Because it happened in that environment, it feels time sensitive because you were on a call, and calls are time sensitive. So you feel like you have to address it in real time, which drives you to not seek to understand, not investigate. It drives you to pull that crew in and say, hey, I noticed this, I need this, the end, move on, go run more calls. Where sometimes we can slow down and say, what's the real issue here? What kind of timeline do I have here to get this addressed? Because sometimes it's better to slow down and get it right than just get an answer. Sometimes you need an answer in real time, and you have to work on the information you have. Do your best to gather as much information as you can, but that crew calls you and says, I got to decide where to take this patient. You don't have days to figure that out, right? You got to make a decision.
Right.
And you just work on the information you have. But some of these investigative things, we can slow it down. And we have a hard time doing that because it's a fast-paced world, and we want to get stuff done. Maybe the right answer was, there's other people that have this figured out. Give me a week, and I will reach out to them, figure out what process they use, and we'll implement the right policy.
Yeah, that's a huge strength that we have because our organization is across the country. And they're always trialing different things in different areas of the country. So there's probably a best practice out there already for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of reaching out and getting that,
Yeah.
putting it in place.
Yeah, I like the saying, especially in a large organization, you don't have to know everything, but knowing everybody helps.
Yeah. Relationships, absolutely.
Time management's tough because everybody's got deadlines, everybody's got a boss, and your deadlines are different than my deadlines. We all have time crunches, and sometimes by the time it gets filtered to us, that 2 weeks we had, it took 10 days to get it to us. So now we got 4 days. And sometimes you just got to deal with that timeline and get it done, because if you don't, maybe we missed an important licensure that allows us to operate. We didn't renew our business license or something like that. Sometimes you just got to put something on the back burner to get this thing done.
Yeah. What immediately comes to mind is the annual corporate training we
Yeah.
have to do. It's like, boy.
That's why we treat it the way we do, right? Because end of the year, when it's due is a very busy time where a lot of things are due. Not just that training, but we have a lot going on. Budgets are going on. A lot's moving in the company at that time. So the sooner we can get that done, I can focus on getting us a budget that's going to help us procure the equipment we need going into next year. But if I'm spending half of my day sending out reports on compliance training, I'm not focused on the budget. I like to get that done now. So when the rest of the organization is screaming and hollering about that, we're done. We've moved on. We're already focusing on the next things. I hate running into that last minute crisis management. There's enough of it we naturally have to do if we can manage any of that and limit it to where, we can self-impose deadlines that are ahead of the actual corporate deadline. I think that helps us. It shows that we're willing to put some attention and organization into things and get stuff done, and we're not going to wait for the CEO of the company to be sending me emails saying, why aren't you done with this?
I am going to say this because for the leadership team, you moved up the dates.
Yeah.
I think it was the end of February. I was in the middle of recertifying.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed those videos.
Yeah, I gave you some hours to research.
During the course of recertifying my medic license.
But
Thank you for that.
I think that's important, right? If as an organization, we're going to move those deadlines up, and locally I'm going to move them up, then I'm moving them up for me too. And you. My deadline was before yours. Yours was before the rest of the crews. That's how leadership works. I can't yell at the field employees to get their training done if mine's sitting there undone.
Right, because that's hypocrisy at that point.
Yeah, because if I've done it, then I can tell people I did it. It took X amount of time. They've changed this, that, and the other thing from last year, and it's really not that bad. Just sit down and do it. Like, you get paid for doing it. And
well, I don't get paid for doing it.
Yeah, the sooner you get it done, the sooner I'll stop sending emails about it.
Right. Let me ask you this. How do you handle the aftermath of a high-stakes decision that the outcome just wasn't we hoped for? Does anything come to mind when I mention that?
I don't know how high stakes this was, but I think, was it Mother's Day last year?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not, it didn't cripple the organization or anything, but I dropped the ball, right? We didn't acknowledge it and celebrate it the way we should have. It would have been easy to...
Yeah, what the hell was wrong with you?
It would have been easy to say my list of 15 reasons that didn't happen. Feel bad for me because of my busy schedule and all this stuff, but nobody cares about that. And not the right thing to say or do. The right thing to say and do was, you're right. I missed that. We should have acknowledged it. We should have done better, and we will do better.
Yeah.
Here's the plan going forward on that. Some of it, I think it's layered.
So we have a lot of moms that work here.
Yeah, depending on what the issue is and the audience you're discussing it with, right? Like if it's an operational failure, as I address that to the entire staff, I'm going to own that operational failure, right? But then as we try to deconstruct that and figure out what happened at the leadership level, maybe it's me and the 5 supervisors all sitting down figuring out what happened. That's where we're more specific on who owned which specific pieces and where did it fall apart.
Right.
Again, not personal, factual. Derek owned this piece. Derek didn't do X, Y, and Z, which caused that piece to fail. Usually it's not one person did one thing and caused the entire thing to blow up. We all missed a small piece of something which caused the overall program to not work.
It just wasn't on the radar, and it should have been.
Sometimes we got to be able to be in an environment where when I have that meeting with the leadership team, I have to have you guys be comfortable enough that if something failed because I oversaturated you or I didn't make expectations clear, if you're not comfortable telling me and you shut down and say, yeah, you're right, I'll do better. Are we actually going to do better? Because we didn't identify the actual problem.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we got to have that environment where we can be open and honest. And, if I'm the one that botched it and my team's sitting there looking at me like, Derek, you screwed this up. Okay, tell me that. It's going to suck. I'm not going to enjoy hearing that, but I need to hear that. And having a team that will tell you those things is invaluable.
Right. Yeah. I'm probably going to catch hell for the what the hell is wrong with you thing. But
right.
Shift into developing the next generation. We talk a lot about leadership, but how are we actually developing the next generation of leaders in EMS? What are we doing well?
I think our organization has made huge strides in this area over the last 5-7 years.
Agreed, yeah.
Whether it be the Frontline Leadership Academy or the investments they've made in developing new leaders or soon-to-be leaders. If you don't have those programs, it took some time to train all your existing leaders. You got to do that before you develop the upcoming ones.
It's going to take time for that to trickle down to where crews are actually seeing it.
I was at a manager orientation. It's basically a manager leadership class. And there's only a handful of actual managers in the class. A lot of them were frontline supervisors that hope to be managers or will be managers soon. And for me to see that the company is investing in that.
Wait a minute. Why wasn't I invited?
I was barely invited. No. But that is something I want you guys all to attend because I think future supervisors should be invested in and trained before they're in that seat.
Right.
Same thing with managers, and succession planning is an important thing. I think it's important that in my seat, I have a couple people identified that can replace me if I get hit by a bus tomorrow. Maybe that won't happen. Maybe that person won't get the job, but I've done what I can to prepare them for that. You should have somebody prepared to replace you. I think we've invested a lot in that, but I think it really starts at the ground level when we hire new EMTs and paramedics. I think EMS has not done a great job of showing people there's a path through the world of EMS that you can grow through. We've all heard it, right? Like, well, there's just no room to grow. So I'm moving on because there's nowhere to go in the organization. And it's just not true. They may not know where to go, but there's plenty of places to grow laterally, across, whatever. If you're that field paramedic and you decide that human resources is your passion, guess what? We need those people too.
Yeah.
At law school, we have attorneys.
Yeah.
If you want to be a welder, we employ those.
And I worked with a gentleman years ago. He's now the vice president of manufacturing, so he's building ambulances for GMR out in Texas now.
Which I guarantee is not what he started as.
No, he was an EMT when I knew him and became a paramedic, and now he's doing that. And that's incredible.
Yeah.
There's opportunity.
Some of it, the individuals have to play a part in. If you want to be somewhere, you have to make that known. It's hard for me to identify somebody and say, I think you should be a manager, so I'm going to make you prepared to be one. I'm not going to do that if I don't think that you want to be a manager.
You don't know what you don't know, right? If the relationships aren't out there, if they're not able to encounter those people during the course of a day, a week, year, whatever it is, then they're not going to know, they're not going to make themselves known as a potential future resource for a job like that.
It takes both ends, right? We've got to be looking for those people.
Right.
And those people got to make themselves stand out. Sometimes it's not by doing anything extraordinary. It's just do the right thing when nobody's watching, because we're watching. We hear it from hospitals or patients or fire departments or police departments. They'll reach out and say, hey, man, your crew crushed it. They're never in trouble. They're never high on your radar for doing amazing things. They're just really good at their job. They just do the right thing all the time.
And it shows up, I think, I was looking at some of the metrics just yesterday and sharing them with some of the crews. You do see it, right? A lot of times those reports tell you things, and you can see it that, they're doing all the right things.
I think as an organization, we got to do better at acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Because we tend to give 80% of our focus to the top 10, bottom 10% of the performers.
Yeah.
Because we praise the hell out of our top 2 or 3 people, and then we spend a lot of focus trying to correct the bottom 2. But it's usually those middle of the pack people, higher end of the middle of the pack. Those are most likely going to be your future leaders if you can develop them and show them that you care, because they see the company's willing to invest in them. And it happened to me, right? Like, I'm not here because any individual amazing accomplishments. I'm here because I've worked hard and I've made people aware of where I want to be. But
Right.
also, those people that were made aware have invested in me. They've mentored me. They've helped me get to where I need to be. I didn't do it alone. I had leaders that cared and saw potential in me, and they didn't necessarily do anything for me, but they showed me the path.
Yeah. And you have a really sick dragon tattoo on your back.
Yeah. No dragon tattoos.
That's okay. You can say it. It's fine. People love dragons. What separates someone with leadership potential from someone who just wants a title? And how do you spot that early on? I know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's hard to articulate, though, because you feel it.
Right.
You feel it more than, there's not a lot of data points. It's from the way people carry themselves, the way they speak, not just to you, but to others. It's their performance, right? Like ones that come to you and say, everybody should be doing X, Y, and Z, but they're not doing those things.
Right.
They want to write everybody up and fire everybody. And it's like, do you? Because I've done those things and they're not fun.
Yeah. Yep.
Firing people is the worst thing to do, even if they deserve it. It's horrible. But those people usually make it obvious to you most of the time.
Right.
Because they're not leading for the people they're leading. They're leading for themselves. Will come to you not to acknowledge what their team did, but to acknowledge what they did.
Right.
Say, hey, did you see how much I crushed it yesterday? Instead of saying, hey, did you see how the team performed yesterday? Those are very different statements, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I've never been one that's huge on titles. I obviously have a uniform with stars and stuff on it, but you don't see me in it very often.
No.
Because I don't feel like I should have to wear that for people to understand that I'm a leader here. They should know that because of how I behave and how I actually lead.
And I think for a young, inexperienced leader, that can be helpful at first, right? To allow them to differentiate themselves as someone.
Yeah.
But
you don't have that track record. You don't
Right.
have that credibility. So you have to almost fake it to make it. Sometimes you have to pretend you know what the hell you're doing. Show people that you're in charge. But that shouldn't last for very long.
Right.
That should fade pretty quick. And then your reputation is what identifies you as a leader.
Right.
Because we've all been on that call, right, where the guy running around screaming that he's in charge isn't in charge. It's that quiet guy that's quietly directing everybody and everybody's staring at. That's the leader.
Yeah.
That's how you tell. When there's a crowd of people, who's everybody focused on?
Who are they turning to?
Yeah.
I agree. Do you think leadership can be taught? Are there really good leaders? Is there something innate in them?
I think there is some innate leadership traits, right, that people have. Some people are good listeners. Some people are very caring of others and not selfish. Some people just have those innate traits.
Yeah.
We all do. A true leader is able to recognize that, though, and understand I'm being selfish here, and this isn't about me. This is about the team.
Right.
Sometimes
In the mission, right?
yeah, we're doing things. It's like, this is the last thing on earth I want to be doing right now. And I could easily pull I'm the manager card, so I'm not going to do this. But is that the right thing to do? I think that's kind of the difference. People with a leadership title will oftentimes bow out of those scenarios. But yeah, I mean, leadership can be developed for sure. You have people that are socially awkward and all the weird things that end up being great leaders. Your innate ability only takes you so far. Similar to like athletics, right? You may have genetic predisposition to be a great athlete, but if you don't show up to practice and you don't have a good coach, are you going to achieve your potential? Probably not.
Yeah.
You may be the world's greatest athlete, but without those things, you're going to be average at best.
Yeah. I agree.
It's all the investments you make in yourself and others that push you over the top.
If someone listening to this right now within our organization or any organization wants to move into a leadership role at some point in their career, what are the things they should be doing? What should they start doing differently tomorrow or today that will put them on that track?
You got to get out of the mindset of, if I were in your shoes, this is how I would behave or expect people to behave. Behave how you want people to behave. Like, you can be that quiet leader, right? Don't wait until somebody promotes you to do all the things you say you want your leader to do. Do those things today. Be accountable today. Show up when you say you're going to show up. Do that today. If you commit to doing that training or covering a shift for somebody, don't backpedal on that. Follow through on your commitment. Maybe life came up and you had to make a personal sacrifice to honor your commitment. Do that. Show people that you're willing to be selfless. There's a limit, right? We all have lives outside of work, and I can't abandon my personal life to be 100% selfless all the time. That's not true leadership either, because I also have a household to lead.
Right.
But striking that balance of sometimes, I'm not going to be home for dinner tonight because I need to be where I need to be. And other times it's like, I'm sorry, guys, I'm not coming to the 4th work dinner this month. I need to be at home with my family. But having that balance, just being honest with yourself. Like, if you're weak somewhere, be willing to grow, be willing to learn. If you want to be in a seat, nothing frustrates me more than we open up a supervisor job, for example, and that person you've never talked to puts in for it. And then they're frustrated they didn't get that job. It's like, well, the person that got it has been talking to me for 6 months about how they really want that job and doing all these things to get prepared for it.
Right.
I've never heard from you until the job is open. Put in the effort of making sure people understand where you want to be. Your navigation isn't going to take you to Kroger if you don't put Kroger in the map.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, if you see someone struggling, get in there and help them.
Yeah.
Don't respond with, that's not my problem. If the system is struggling, help the system.
We're quick to criticize, slow to coach.
There are individuals that are really good at pointing out problems, but they don't bring solutions with the problems. They just point out the problem. Bring some solutions. If you can spot a problem and craft a solution that shows that you're able to work through issues and present a path forward.
Yeah,
and we need leaders that can do that.
If you can recognize it's broken and not working, that means you probably know how it should go, or at least what you think it should go. Bring that. Maybe we're not going to land on your solution, but it gives us a starting point and a framework, and
Right.
I know what your expectations are. When you bring a problem to me, if a crew member has a problem and they bring it to supervision and supervision passes it to me and says, solve this problem, I may do that. But if I don't talk to that crew member and I don't talk to supervision, I may come up with a solution that sounds really great from my desk. But really, the closer to the problem we can solve the problem, the better the outcome's going to be. That problem's being solved by the people experiencing it, and they know what solution is actually going to work for them. As much as we don't like leaders that are out of touch, it's part of the nature, right? I'm not as intimately involved in day-to-day patient care as the paramedic on the truck is. That's just the reality. So if they're having an issue, their solution is probably, their version of it is probably going to be a more workable solution for the end user than what I'll come up with. And I think I've gotten to a point where I've made it fairly clear that I'm not It doesn't have to be my solution. It doesn't have to be my way or the highway, but I'd prefer it not to be my solution, actually.
Yeah.
If a problem needs solved and it's not getting solved, I'll solve it one way or another, but I'd prefer it to be a collaborative thing where the person experiencing the issue is involved in the problem-solving process.
At the end of the day, we have a mission, and that's to respond to the calls that we're handed with the highest degree of professionalism we can achieve, the highest degree of patient care we can achieve. That should be our aim, right? As an organization, we should all not lose focus on that mission, on that patient. Before we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts?
I think it's a really fun and inspiring yet challenging time to be in EMS. The world's changing rapidly, and the fun part is we get to be a part of that change. What the things we're doing today are going to impact EMS for years to come. So it's our opportunity to get it right. We're not in that period. We're in the rapid change period, and now is our opportunity to put a mark on it. And when we're old and retired, talking to young EMS professionals, and they talk about how good or bad things are going for them, we can be that old paramedic, be like, you should have been around in my day. We had challenges, but we helped solve them. We were a part of that change. You know, I want people to be as excited and passionate about it as I am. You're not going to get everybody to do that, but it really is a great time to be in EMS. I truly think we're on the cusp of changing it from, you know, being looked at as a second or third tier career to a true respected profession that gets the same level of acknowledgement as a lot of long-standing established professions do.
If you look at what was going on in EMS in the 60s and 70s, you had the Cadillac ambulances with a sink and a stretcher. That was it. And we just picked people up, drove them to the hospital. And the capability of the paramedic coming out of school today is so extraordinary, the things that we can do to impact people's lives for the better. It's absolutely extraordinary. And we're standing on the precipice of the future with the technology coming down the road, the system redesigns that are happening and rethinking how we're processing just a simple call that comes in. It's extraordinary. We really are. Big things are going to happen.
It's going to be unrecognizable. It's changed a ton since I've gotten in the business, and it's not slowing down. It's exciting times.
We have these conversations like the one we've just had. We have them fairly frequently.
Yeah.
I always enjoy them because I think we're able to test these leadership ideas and thoughts and what we're doing. I think it really hones the skills. I think it's good. And I'm glad that we can sit down and share this stuff with people that might be interested.
You're only maintain and grow in the areas you focus on.
Yeah.
And if you talk about leadership and you think about it and want to improve, it'll get better.
I agree. Thank you for doing this. I know you carved out a big chunk of your day to sit down and do it.
Yeah, of course. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to In Service, the EMS podcast, where frontline experience meets leadership insight. If you have found value in this conversation, please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. You will find links in the episode notes.